Welcome back to the Through the Veil podcast. I'm Elle.
I'm Camille.
And this is the podcast where we seek to demystify, develop, and celebrate our spiritual gifts, all through a faith-based lens. Today, we have the amazing Jenedy Paige with us, and we've been really excited to do this podcast. I don't think there's anything Jenedy hasn't done. She's like a superpower of a woman, and if you are not familiar with her, you go get yourself familiar with her because she's amazing on every front. This woman is an incredibly accomplished artist. If you haven't seen her artwork anywhere, go find some because it's phenomenal. She is a spiritual powerhouse and a ninja warrior. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Literally.
Thanks.
Literally amazing. We have recently become familiar with Jenedy, and we are blessed by this blossoming friendship. Jenedy, do you want to give us a little bit of a deeper understanding of who you are and kind of how you came to be so amazing?
Well, I mean, honestly, I never intended to become any of these things. And it's all come as I've tried to develop a relationship with God. And something I try to encourage people is, hey, you get to know God, and then He'll introduce you to who you are. Because it's like, growing up, I had no idea who I was or what I was going to be or what I was going to do. I mean, I thought I was going to be maybe an English teacher or a pianist. And in my journey to come to know God and His Son, Jesus Christ, they have in turn introduced me to the fact that, no, actually, you're an artist. Oh, and fun plot twist, when you're 34, you're going to become a ninja, you know? And so I'm just here along for the ride. Like, I'm always like, hey, what's the next chapter? Most recently, this past year, he directed me to host a conference for 500 women, which was like another thing that I never saw myself doing. And I really do feel that as children of God, as daughters of God, like we have the potential, like our potential is endless. And you just have to tap into that relationship with divinity and then let them guide you into who you are.
I love that. I think so much of our mortal journey here on Earth is rediscovery about who we really are and who we're meant to be, more than getting distracted in all of the things that are so distracting about mortality, right? So I love that you have, I wouldn't say that anybody's mastered this skill, but you have gone very, very far along the path, maybe comparatively to some of the rest of us. But that story hasn't been without peril, right? It hasn't been without bumps and learning moments that may have been incredibly challenging. Particularly, it's maybe we would like to highlight your story through healing and through loss. Would you be willing to go into that a little bit with us today?
I was a young mother. I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and we were living with my parents so my husband could afford grad school. And they had a swimming pool and a pond on the acre property, and my mom was very concerned when we moved in with the 2 little boys, and I was like, it's going to be okay. Like, we've got fences and alarms and gates and all the things. So yeah, we did live there for a year without any trouble. And then just one morning, I was feeding my 1-year-old breakfast, and my 3-year-old was on this gated patio playing, and somehow he ended up in the swimming pool. And we kind of figured that he had like gone through the garage because he got his bike, like a tricycle, and it was in the pool with him. So I think that he was just trying to ride his bike around the pool and a whale went off the edge. But in any case, you call 911 and the paramedics come and you wonder why it's taking so long. And then you are in this kind of alternate reality. Well, you're watching the paramedics work on your son and the cops are there and they're asking you questions and you're just like, how is this my life right now? And then my son was resuscitated, life flighted, and we then spent 7 weeks in Tucson Medical Center. And he was at first in a medically induced coma to allow his body a little chance to heal. So he was intubated. And I had been taught my whole life to build a relationship with God, and that if I did, that I'd be able to be strengthened through whatever life would throw at me. And part of that developing a relationship was this pattern of prayer, journal, and scripture study, and a daily practice in that. And so when my son was in the hospital, like that's what I did every day was I wrote in my journal and I read my scriptures and I prayed. And I tried to remind God of like all the miracles that he had ever performed in the Bible. Like you rose the widow of Nain's son from the dead. I mean, my son's not even dead yet. Like this isn't supposed to be hard for you. Then my son was extubated, and immediately he started something called storming. So in near drowning victims, sometimes the nervous system like tries to reset. Sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight response. So a sympathetic storm is when that fight or flight response goes kind of haywire. And so for my son, it just looked like everything curled, everything flexed, and his heart rate went super high and his breathing went super high. At the beginning, they lasted like 20 minutes. But then over the course of our time there, they got longer and longer until they were eventually like 48 hours. And the doctors kept trying to pump him with Valium and morphine and whatever they could. And no medication could stop the storms. And so like as a mom, like all you can do is stand there. And I know that while I stood, especially like the nights when I was by myself, that I was supported by angels on the other side. Like so many times I'm like walking the halls of the hospital and I just felt like I had one under each arm. Like, cause there was no way that I could be enduring this by myself, you know?
Right.
And it's kind of interesting because when my son was in the hospital, I had a dream. And in the dream, he wasn't in his hospital bed. And me and my husband and my parents were looking all over the hospital for my son. And my son's name is Victory Morgan, but we called him Morgan. I mean, he went by his middle name. So we're looking all over the hospital, like, Morgan, where are you? And in the dream, I look under his hospital bed and he's crouched under there. He's this little 3-year-old. And I was like, Morgan, what are you doing? And he was just laughing and smiling at me like we were playing hide and go seek. And I woke up from that dream and I thought, you know, maybe God was trying to tell me that this was a in and out of body experience for him.
Yeah.
I sure hope it was, because if he really had to be there convulsing for hours and hours on end, like oh my gosh, I can't imagine, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, after 7 weeks and these incredible storms, the storms eventually broke his body and he passed away. And I mean, the words that I usually say is severely disappointed. It kind of felt like a breakup in a way, like I had been dating someone and then they just hurt me so deeply because I'd had this relationship with God and then he literally let me down, you know, because he didn't do what I thought he would. Because
when he was capable.
Yeah.
Which you
like,
knew he could do.
What I knew he could do and what he had done. And so I asked a lot of difficult questions after my son passed away. And one of them was like, hey, you told me that I'm supposed to like liken the scriptures to myself. And like, where's my story?
Right.
Like, I need the story in the Bible. Where's the mom? She has got all the faith in the world. And then her son dies. And God was like, well, Jenedy, what about my son? Like, his mom had all the faith in the world too.
Yeah.
And sometimes people have to die. Like, sometimes that's part of their story and part of this big plan that I have for mankind. And it's like so hard to swallow, you know, because you think, how can anything be better with him not here? Like, how could this be part of some cool plan that you've got going, you know?
Right.
And then like the other question I asked was like, you know, I had all the faith in the world. And then God was like, yeah, but Jenedy, what takes more faith, like getting what you want or continuing on when you don't?
Whoa.
And you're like,
hard. Bitter cup.
Like, I don't want to hear that right now.
Probably continuing on when you don't, you know. And anyways, lots of difficult lessons, but also some very beautiful experiences because I remember it was shortly after my son passed away. and you're kind of in that fog. And I was just in the kitchen, like gonna make dinner or something. And all of a sudden I felt a spirit. And how I describe to people how I sense my son is it feels like an electricity. Like I feel warm, I feel light, and I feel a vibration. That for me, like I like an electricity shock that doesn't hurt. That feels good. It's kind of like the best thing that I can come up with. But what's crazy is I had felt that same spirit when he was in the hospital, and I had felt it accompanied with, "It's going to be okay."
Interesting.
And so I think that's why I felt so strongly that my son was going to survive, because I had felt over and over again, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And then I'm in the kitchen and I feel this exact same spirit. And I realized that it was my son. And he's like, "Mom, it's going to be okay." And feeling that there in my kitchen, I realized he must have been in and out of body, because I felt that same thing when I was in the hospital, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, it's also different because, like, you know, you might feel the Holy Spirit when you're reading scripture or like listening to an inspirational song or whatever. But for me, this comes almost out of nowhere. Like I'm not really doing anything. It's just like there it is. And it was also interesting because my son was 3 when he passed away, but this spirit that I felt was over my shoulder,
Was
like
mature.
was
Wow.
standing behind me, you know? And so it's been like really beautiful coming to recognize my son, like relearning him as a spirit. And then on top of that, my son, you know, passed away in Tucson, and my husband was in grad school, and we knew we weren't going to be there very, very long. And I just couldn't bury him in Tucson. Like there was no way I was going to leave him under the gravel.
Yeah.
And so as we talked about what to do, my mom had lost a brother to a river, and he was buried in Ogden, Utah. And my grandma said that we had like some family plots in the cemetery by my uncle. And so we loaded up our 4Runner. I put my 18-month-old son in his car seat, and I slid my 3-year-old son's casket in the 4Runner next to him, and we drove him to Utah.
Wow.
And it was about like a 13-hour drive, I think. 11 hours. I know, it was quite a
it's a long one.
ways. It's a ways.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is that his spirit was in the car with us, you know? And so as we're driving through southern Utah, this song by Leona Lewis came on the radio. It's called Happy. And all of a sudden I was just filled with this joy almost. And I look over at my husband and I was like, "Do you feel that? Like how am I feeling happy at all right now? Like our casket's in the back seat. Like, how are we feeling joy at all?" And I really think it's because my son joined us on the road trip and was telling me the whole time, "Mom, it's going to be great. It's going to be fine. I'm fine. You're going to be fine. It's all okay." You know, like reassuring me like the whole trip. And then, you know, now it's been all these years and he just continues to show up sometimes. But a lot of times when I'm painting in the studio, early in the morning, not every day, like it's just whenever, it's like stopping by. But it's always it's like that same spirit. It just like rushes in and fills my whole body. And I just get to say hello, you know.
It's beautiful.
So.
Yeah.
What I think it's those moments and those glimpses, those witnesses, we would call them maybe tender mercies, when we're in really deep places that end up being our saving grace. But it's also a really challenging thing to reconcile deep lessons while you're deep in pain. How long did it take you, or how do you think you put that together? How did you find your way through that?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. One, kind of a not coincidence, is that our congregation was split, and we had like new boundaries the Sunday before my son passed away. And I had a new Relief Society president, new leader in our church over the women's organization. And she had lost a son the year prior. And he was like in his 20s and was in like a hang gliding accident. So very different circumstances, but she had just been through this thing. And she came to the funeral, and one thing that she told me, and she said, Jenedy, I chose to keep a gratitude journal for the first year after my son passed away, and it was kind of a lifesaver for me. And so I decided to take her advice, and every day I wrote down 5 things I was grateful for from that day specifically. So not like, I'm thankful for my family and I'm thankful for, like I'm thankful for, springtime, whatever. It was just like what happened that day, and like having this mental shift where I'm looking every day for 5 things from that day to be grateful for. So it was like, my 1-year-old sticky hands on my shirt, or like my husband came home from work early, or just like little things. But keeping that journal was, I think, really helpful, because you are like, I think the first 6 months or so I was in total fog, like, do I even feel anything? He passed away in November, and then it's like the holidays, Thanksgiving, it's Christmas, and I literally don't remember much about those holidays, like, at all.
Yeah, it's understandable.
And for me, it was kind of like, it was like kind of like the 9-month mark for me, where I was at ground zero. It was like, I kind of describe it like this, like God had me on a spiritual morphine drip, like some spiritual painkillers, for real. And then after about, between 6 and 9 months, he was like, hey, we're going to start taking the IV out, and we're going to start weaning you off of this medication, and you're going to let you start to feel again. And we're going to do it like nice and gentle, like, but yeah, for me, that was like the hardest time, because I felt the drip go away. And I just remember everybody goes back to life. People stop calling, the cards stop coming, your flowers are all dead. And you're looking out your window, watching your neighbor bring in groceries. And you're just like, wow, she's just like, it's like nothing's happened. She's just bringing in her groceries. That's weird, because my whole life is shattered. Like I'm in pieces on the floor over here. And so when I was hitting that kind of blow, I just continued that gratitude practice, and I actually love going back and reading those journals now, because even in the midst of complete and utter destruction and tragedy, like, there was still beauty in my life, I also continued the practice that I talked about when my son was in the hospital, which was writing a journal, prayer, and scripture study. Even when I'm mad. And this is one thing I try to encourage people, is that, if you've gone through something, God has disappointed you, that happens. If you're in any kind of a normal relationship, like a real relationship, there's going to be disappointments that happen. I mean, if your relationship with God is kind of shallow and not really deep, then, maybe he can't hurt you that much, because you're not really that connected anyways. But if you've had like a deep connection, then I feel like the disappointment is like all the more deep, And I tell people, show up mad. I mean, because this is the thing, is it's like, I knew he was there. I knew too much to walk away. Right. I knew that he was aware of me. He just didn't give me what I wanted. But because I knew so much, I couldn't just, throw it away. And so instead, I just decided to keep showing up in the relationship, but showing up honest. And sometimes honest prayers look like, dear God, I don't even really have anything to say right now. Like, I just hurt, and I'm just disappointed, and I'm mad. But I do know that you're aware of me, so I'm here. Like, but this is where I'm at, and I feel like it's so much better than just saying, like, Thank you for this day. Thank you that I'm still breathing, and thankful for another day more. Just like coming up with some kind of shallow, repetitive thing. Like, I think it's better just to show up honest. And I think it's okay to tell about how you feel. Because I just think, he wants a real relationship with you. He'd rather you be honest than come up with some fake rose-colored glasses situation. And he's there to see you. Like, there's this hymn, it says, like, he lives to hear my soul's complaint, and like, he's there to listen to you. He knows it wasn't easy. You just lost your son. Guess what? He's lost his son too. Like, he knows how it feels. And so just show up honestly, and then let him walk you through the healing process, and know it's going to take years. I know nobody wants to hear that. Like, I think about when we're working on our health and fitness, people are like, oh, well, I invested 6 weeks. I mean, that was a big investment,
Good sacrifice.
And I even think, you break a bone and it takes minimum of 6 weeks, probably more like 3 months, depending on the injury, could be 6 months, and that's like our physical bodies. And I just have this feeling that our spirits are like a little slower to heal.
Yeah.
And so give yourself time. It's not, it could be 5 years. That's not slow. That's just healing. In fact, it was like, I was 5 years into my journey when I did this painting called Let Go. And it's of a woman holding onto a black balloon. And what happened was I found myself in some PTSD. Like, I continued to have children. I had 2 more children after I lost my son. So I had 3 here, and they were little, and they were literally like heart hazards, because anything could happen. Right. I mean, lightning could strike, and little pieces of me were out walking around. And I just remember thinking, like, a car could come. They're out riding their bikes. Bam. And it's funny because I think prior to my son's accident, I had this belief that I was somehow immune to life. Like hardships happen to other people, but like not me. But then once I experienced this tragedy, I felt so susceptible to everything. Like, I was contagious, and I wondered, like, how do I deal with this? Because I can't be a helicopter mom. I can't be watching my kids at all times, and I can't save them from everything. And so, like, how do I handle this? And one day my 5-year-old like walked into my bathroom, and he was dragging a black balloon behind him that we had gotten from the dollar store, like a little helium balloon. He was just dragging it. And I saw that image, and I was like, oh, that's me. Like, that's exactly how I feel. Like, every day I'm just dragging this black balloon around. And I loved the imagery of a balloon because I realized, like, I was holding it. But as soon as I was ready to let it go, it would go, And then the other thing I liked about the black balloon is that it offers a warped perspective of reality. Like, in the painting, so I had a model that was holding the balloon, but I'm actually in the painting because I'm in the reflection of the balloon, because I'm taking the picture. And you can see actually my son's portrait on the wall, and the reflection is all distorted. And when we see life through this holding on to grief lens, it kind of distorts how we see reality. And I felt God asking me, like, are you ready to let it go yet? And I feel like, maybe there's this tendency for the adversary to keep us there. And one thing I think that he says is, if you are not sad every day for the rest of your life, then you have forgotten him.
Yeah, it's a betrayal. Functional living is a betrayal. That's the lie.
Yeah, and it's such a lie.
Yeah.
And the truth is that when you hand that grief over to God, because it is heavy and it does weigh you down, that you find you have more love for your son on the other side, not less. So that painting was really pivotal for me because I felt God asking me to kind of sacrifice my broken heart.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to do. But when you're ready, it's like you have to put your grief on the altar. And it's so hard because you feel like the grief is tying you to your son.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's actually not. It's God that will tie you to your son. And people say, well, Jenedy, how did you ever really let it go? And it's hard because you can't really say, well, on Tuesday, I let the balloon go,
At 5 p.m. into the sunset.
Yeah, it's more of like, it was more of like a mind shift that started as I worked on that painting. And as I prayed, it was something I tried to ask God to help me let it go because I didn't really know how. But all I know is that over time I started to feel lighter. And I also started to focus more on others and using what I had been through to help others carry their burdens. And in so doing, mine became very light.
I keep going back to the thought of you through your relationship with God, discovering who you truly are and like having those like, maybe what we thought we were, kind of chipping away at that and discovering your truest self. And then who you thought your son was when he was in the hospital and you didn't recognize that was his spirit with you. Like later when he came, we're at the kitchen sink, like just what we think we know and what really is, there's such a separation. And the closer we can become to the spirit, the more we can step into the truth. I think that's really beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really beautiful, Camille.
How do you think the discovery, I mean, you're gifted in so many different ways. And a lot of these, I loved at the beginning, you were talking about, like as a 12-year-old girl, I was like, I'm going to be an English teacher.
Yeah, which is
what else am I
great.
going to do with my life? I don't know. Seems like a good idea. How do you think that the Lord has shown you all these incredible gifts you have? I mean, you're very close. Camille and I talk all the time about having a closeness to the veil. But also you have this beautiful outlet with art. I mean, you're amazingly gifted, not without work put into it. But at the beginning, 12 years old, you didn't know that was there. You didn't know that was going to be anything that was going to take any kind of relevance in your life at all. How have these things shown up? Did you go out searching for who you were, or did you just kind of like give it all over to the Lord and he showed you? How did that play out and how has it affected you?
That's a really good question, Elle. And I would say that actually it's interesting because all of them were tied to obedience. And they say like obedience is the first law of heaven. And it was so true.
Blessing is predicated upon the law of obedience.
Yeah. So for example, art, it was actually a move my senior year of high school. And we were living in Utah at the time. We were going to be moving to a small town in Colorado. And my parents, they gave me this choice to make. You can stay and finish your senior year, live with your grandparents, or you can move with us to Colorado. And I love it because my mom had already taught me this pattern of developing this relationship. And then she trusted in my relationship with God. She trusted in me enough to say, you're going to make the right decision. You go talk it out with the Lord and then let me know what you come to. Now I know. Now I've got kids. My oldest is almost 16, and I just think, oh my gosh, like that amount of trust. And I really honor my mom for placing that trust in me and in that relationship. And so then I prayed about it for several weeks. And one day I was at work and I was all by myself. And I feel like this happens too. Like I rarely get answers to my prayers when I'm on my knees.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's when I'm doing something. So I'm at work, I'm by myself. Yeah. And God just says, Jenedy, what do you want? And I knew in the question, he meant like big picture. And so I got out a little like notepad at the cash register at the store I was working at. And I was like, I want to be a mom. I want to be valedictorian. I want to apply to college. I want to get married. I want to write a book. Just made like this little list of like dream list. And God was like, okay, well, which of those things can't you have if you move? Yeah, well, I guess I can still have all my hopes and dreams. And then he had me make another list, and it was like, what are the positives of staying in Utah and what are the positives of moving? And the positives of Utah was like this huge list of like dating pool, my awesome job. I was going to be a student body officer. I got into this choir. And then the positives of moving was just one thing, and it was my family. But like I saw those two things on a scale, and I was like, oh gosh, my family, dang it. Like, as much as I wanted to say, no, this stuff's more important, I knew. And in that moment, I felt God offer me that invitation that you know what you need to do, you know? And so it's so beautiful. Yeah, it was like my mom trusted me, and then God trusted me too, you know? And so I came home and I told my mom that I was going to move. And it was really tough. I felt like,
she was
you
like,
know,
yes.
I know she was like, she's like, I'm glad we're on the same team, you know? Okay. I remember writing in my journal, like, God's never asked so much of me before. Like, he's literally taking my life. And I trusted him. And because I moved, now I go to this tiny town. There's 80 kids in my graduating class. And I go to sign up for classes, and I wanted to take AP and honors classes because that's all I had done prior, and they didn't have it because the school was so small. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll take art. And so art came into my life. It's like, you know, surrender your life and I will give you a new one. I mean, that's exactly what happened to me. Like I gave up everything that I thought that I wanted, and then he introduced me to art. And it's so beautiful because at this tiny school, there was a teacher that introduced art to me in the form of a journal, you know, and I'm the girl that's kept a journal since I was 10. And so it couldn't have been more perfect.
More perfect. I love that. I want to hit really quickly because obedience, I love that you introduce it so gently. And so it's like circumcutive, like it's not a direct obedience, because I think it's kind of a dirty word today, especially in Christianity. We're like, obedience, that's like submitting yourself. It feels like someone's taking power from you. It feels like blind worship. When it's not, that's not what God is asking. What he's asking is faith and trust. He's asking you to trust him enough to do what he asks you to do, and to believe that the outcome is going to be positive, right? And that is the reason that he gives us, guidelines. I wouldn't say
boundaries,
laws or rules even. It's guidelines. I remember I taught a church lesson one time, and I found this beautiful picture of a cow. And he was trying to force his way through a fence because there was like a little strip of really green grass on the other side. But on the other side of that 3 feet of grass was a sharp cliff that fell like 70 feet. And it's like, boundaries are there for our protection and obedience and or our benefit. What that really looks like is a relationship. You know, it all comes back to having a relationship with God. Do we trust that what he's asking us to do is going to have an outcome that is going to be the best outcome or a better outcome than we could dream of? Because oftentimes we don't see the cliff on the other side of that fence.
Right. And for you to have that relationship with God required not just obedience, but consistency. You were willing on a daily basis to journal, read scripture, pray, and then while you're out and about, like, receive, honestly, like at your job, and like just be open to what God is going to speak to you when you're in motion. But like that consistency is huge. And if you really boil it down, like what God is asking us to do, I mean, the two main commandments are love God and love your neighbor. When you love, that raises in the spiritual world, we'd say that raises your vibration. That puts you in a place where you are more receptive to receive from the other side, from God, from loved ones who've passed away. It's a boundary that gives you a higher capacity to receive, a higher capacity to feel joy, even when you're driving with your son's casket in the SUV. Like, what the heck, right? Like, because of that receptivity, you're able to have a fuller life.
I love the writings of C.S. Lewis. I actually took like a C.S. Lewis class in college. And we also studied a little bit of George MacDonald, which most people know Lewis, but maybe haven't heard of George MacDonald, who was kind of the mentor to Lewis. And George MacDonald was a Scotsman. And one thing he said is, it's simply absurd to say you believe or even want to believe in him if you don't do anything he tells you. And I love that so much. I just feel like it's so true. You know, it's like you say that you're Christian, but that when he asks you to do something, are you going to do it?
Yeah. Can you please tell us about this ninja warrior? I mean, it's so, when I first met you, I was like, is she speaking in some type of like analogy or like, metaphor? No, literally.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just one of those things that God threw me a curveball. He extended an invitation. I was crazy enough to accept it. So it was like 2018, and my little brother invited me to go rock climbing indoors with him one day and to a bouldering gym, so you don't have ropes. And I found out that the routes were called problems, and you could just like go face your problems at the climbing gym. And I loved that. And you could tackle like easy problems and feel like a champion. You could pick easy or hard, whatever. So I got into climbing, and I was like 3 months into it because, and let me just tell you, prior to this, what was my athletic prowess? I was a runner, kind of a casual runner, although after my son passed away, I became more of a competitive runner just because it was like a release for me. But as far as like upper body, I mean, I flexed, and it was like my bicep looked just like my forearm, like I didn't have any upper body. So I'm at the climbing gym one morning, and I feel a prompting, and the thought is apply to American Ninja Warrior. And I was like, yeah, no, I had actually been on the couch with my husband watching the show, and I had looked at him and I had been like, would you ever do that? And he was like, no. And I was like, yeah, me either. That's crazy. So I'd already decided, like, prior to this, that it was something I was never going to do. And so when it came, I just kind of pushed it aside. And this is the cool thing, is that God is persistent, and he is patient, and he will give you multiple chances, which is awesome. So for me, it was like every time I went climbing, this thought came back. And finally one day I'm just like, okay, like I'm feeling this thing, but I don't want to do this thing. So I'm like pushing against this thing. So this thing cannot be me because I don't want to do it. So this thing has to be coming from somewhere else because I'm fighting against it. And that's when I was like, okay, we have to pray about this. I mean, it sounds so crazy, but we have to pray about it. So I'm literally driving home from the climbing gym. I'm in my car. I'm stopped at a red light. And this thought is just so persistent. And my kids are little at the time, right? And so where do you receive revelation as a mom? In your car, when you're by yourself. So I'm in the car, and I just literally offered aloud a prayer. And I've actually offered so many prayers like this. And I was just like, Holy Father, like I keep having this feeling. And I know this is crazy and it's so weird, but I just want to run this past you. Are you trying to tell me that you want me to apply to American Ninja Warrior? And my car filled with that electricity I told you about, like that spirit. And I was like, oh my gosh, no. Because now I have to do it. Oh,
you weren't supposed to say yes.
Now I have to do it. But my one consolation prize was he did just ask me to apply.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, we just have to apply. That's okay. So I just went online and I did a little bit of research and found out what you need to do to apply. And then you have to make a submission video. Well, I didn't have a ninja gym close to me, so I went to where a trampoline park where kids have their birthday parties. And they had set up some ninja obstacles at this trampoline park. And I went with a film guy. And he was like a really direct, almost like a New York personality. And he was like, okay, we're going to start here at the quintuple steps. You're going to do the rolling log. You're going to do the jumping spider. And then you're going to do the double steps. And we're going to do it all in one take. And we're going to go. And I was like, cool. I was thinking, I've never done this before, but okay. So like I go over to the starting line and you have all this fear, like, am I really going to be able to do this? And all of a sudden, Angel at my back, my son, he was there. It surprised me. I didn't anticipate feeling him there that day. And he just said, Mom, let's do this. And I was like, yes. It was like, all my hesitation goes out the window. Any fear, you don't second guess yourself when an angel just says, let's go. So then I just ran and I went across the quintuple steps and I ran across the spinning log and I did the jumping spider and then I did the double steps and I came back down the other side and I looked at my husband and we were both kind of in shock. And I was like, I've never done that before. He was like, I know. And I was like, maybe I could be a ninja. I don't know. And that was my submission video. And then after I submitted it, I was like, okay, I don't think they're going to call me to compete, but if they do, and I haven't like trained or practiced at all, I'm going to look like an absolute fool. So we should maybe I should sign up for some classes. And I found a gym like an hour from my house, and I signed up for classes. And did I want to go to class? No. Was I sweating like down past my rib cage before I even walked in the door? Yes. And then did I proceed to fall and eat it over and over again? Also, yes. Also, my hands were bleeding when I got back in the car, and I can like barely hold the steering wheel. And I'm like, God, this is dumb. Did you know I need these to make money? I'm an artist.
Oh.
These are my money makers, and you're throwing them into metal bars. And if you really want me to do this, like, I'm gonna need some more support next week. And so that's how the ninja journey started. And it was kind of I'm so grateful now. I absolutely love the sport. I'm kind of obsessed. But one thing that it really taught me was that we are capable of more than we believe. Just like I showed myself in that, first run for my video. Like, I didn't think there was any way, and then I did it. And then you start taking classes, and one of the first things you have to do is there's like a metal bar right here, and then there's another metal bar like 6 feet away, and you have to swing on this bar, throw, levitate your body, and catch over here. And I remember like swinging on that bar, and I was like, I'm 5'7". This is a 6-foot gap. I mean, does the physics make sense here that this is even possible? Like, how am I gonna and you throw and you fall and you throw and you fall, and then eventually like you tap it with your fingers, and then you're like, oh,
it's possible.
Tapped it. I literally need like 2% more, and then I'm there, and then I remember like you just feel elated because when you catch the bar, you go, I did the impossible today. I just did. Like, that was impossible, and I did it. And you just realize that you're like, I'm a daughter of God. Like, yes, I am. And I can fly 6 feet through the air. Like, what else is possible for me? And
I love that.
And over time, that bar moved 7 feet, 8 feet, 9 feet, 10 feet. And then this past year, I did an 11-foot lache, like literally across the width of this room. And
oh my gosh.
And can I go 12? Probably. I don't know.
When you think of God engaging in other things, maybe not Ninja Warrior, right? You're not like, it's an inherently spiritual subject and God should be involved in this in my life, right? And so when you think about it and you get this nudge from the Spirit, you're like, what? Like, what is your end game here? How does this help your plan for my, future, my future glory in heaven? Like, what? Why is that the thing you want me to do right now? But it's so amazing to see how there's always a much bigger picture than we can see at play. And sometimes it's incredibly unexpected. And if we're willing to go the distance, to follow those unusual sidebar quests, sometimes they end up being monumental. And not just for what we're doing, but also for hundreds of other people, hundreds of other girls who have watched you do this, who hear your story, who their life is fundamentally changed because of the possibility that they could be something bigger. How amazing that God is everywhere in the story, even in Ninja Warrior. Even in Ninja Warrior, God's fingers are in it. It blows me away.
I think sometimes God asks us to do something and we always want to know why.
Yeah.
So, in science, you have laws, and that explains what things are, but then we theorize why it happens. And theories evolve and change over time, but laws are. And I feel like God offers us a law or a commandment, and then we start theorizing all day long about like why he wants us to do it. And that totally happened to me. I remember driving to Tacoma to compete on my first season and thinking, I'm why. Oh my gosh, it's because I'm going to go sit in this green room with these producers, and I'm going to share the story of how God healed me. And then I'm going to be able to share that message on television, and it's going to be amazing. And this is like my missionary moment for him. And it's funny because even as I was driving there, God told me, Jenedy, you're making a lot of assumptions about why I asked you to do this. And I was like, of course I am. Because I'm trying to figure out why the crap you asked me to do this. This is the most crazy thing ever. And then I go and compete, and I did really well for a rookie. I mean, I made it to the fourth obstacle. There's only 5, so to make it to 4 is great. And then they didn't air me. And I was like, wait, it didn't happen? Like, I didn't even realize that was the thing. I didn't know they only air like 30% of the athletes that compete on the show. And then I go back to prayer, and I was like, well, why did we do that? I mean, that was really hard. It was difficult. It was an emotional roller coaster. It was expensive. It took time away from my art. Like, why did we do that? And then God was like, sweet girl, you have been training for what, 3 months? What would happen if you trained for a whole year? Oh my gosh. We're doing this again?
Not one and done.
We're doing this again? And God's like, I just gave you a year. Go train. And I was like, okay. And so then this repeats, and I did 4 seasons and was never aired. And now I'm getting kind of mad. And I mean, I'm trying so hard, and I don't know why it's not happening. And like what I think that he wants me to do with it is not happening. So I get to my studio, and I'm kind of mad after this, what feels like a failure, like a 4th failure. And I'm like, why are we still doing this? And then God was like, oh, did you think this was about TV? Wait. Do you think I care about reality television, Jenny? And I was like, well, I mean, I don't know. Like, you're the one that asked me to do this. And then God was like, Jenedy, look at yourself. Look at who you are. I mean, look at your arms, girl. Like, you're a totally different person than you were 4 years ago. And you get so focused on outcomes. He's like, I needed you not just to do something, I needed you to become something. And this thing that I asked you to do is going to help you get there. And I was like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a lot stronger than I used to be. You just needed me to become a strong person. Oh, okay, well, do I apply for the next season? Also, yes. And I was like, okay. Yeah. So then I applied for season 5, and then they aired me, like my 5th time. They aired my run, and I got that moment to share 6 minutes on NBC of my art and my story and my son and the victory that God offers us through his son, Jesus Christ. And it was truly beautiful. And my 6th season will be aired in June. And so, I mean, that eventually happened, but it's kind of beautiful for me that God gave me this lesson first. And like, you know, I ask you to do things to become. I don't necessarily ask you to do things because I want you on TV, you know?
Right. And or the time. I mean, the sacrifice of time that it takes to do something that pans out. We live in a very instantaneous age, and we're like, if it's longer than 30 seconds, I'm not committed. I'm like, I'm going to swipe to the right things. Like,
I know. One thing I also learned too is like, as God built my body stronger, I felt my spirit also getting stronger. And I've learned this connection between our bodies and our spirits that maybe I never realized prior. And, you know, it's like we keep physical health over here, and we keep spiritual health over here. And they're almost like these 2 separate worlds, but those 2 forms of strength and health exist in one inside of us.
right.
And I really do think that when we strengthen our body, it makes our spirit stronger. And I think when we strengthen our spirit, it makes our body stronger. And that learning how to harness and develop both those kinds of strength inside us is really important, because being physically and spiritually strong and working in harmony helps you take on the challenges of life.
Something that I've noticed about you that I really respect, kind of as a closing thought with this, is like there is a certain amount of self-control, discipline that goes into doing something like this. And really anything. Like if you are going to excel at anything or grow any skill, grow any gift, grow any talent, or even just master yourself, which honestly is kind of like the whole point and purpose of what we're doing here, right?
Right.
Self-mastery to a degree. Um, it's like these are all loaner vehicles and we got to learn how to handle them and respect them. And so someday we get the more permanent installment. Um, but in order to do any of that, you have to have self-discipline. You have to have self-mastery. And that is a skill that is de-emphasized today. We don't gain discipline in anything, right? It's all about instant gratification. It's all about what we want to do, when we want to do it, and living life to the greatest entertainment and self-pleasure. And so, yeah, I think we've kind of lost that. But you're such a great example. I mean, Jenedy gets up at like 5 a.m., guys, and it's gross and disgusting, but she's
Yeah.
amazing at everything she does because she has the self-discipline to do that and then work on things that actually matter with that time instead of maybe scrolling her phone like some of us would do. We have to wrap up. This has been a fantastic conversation. Jenedy has so many amazing stories that maybe we'll have to have her back to hear.
Yeah.
Heaven touches her life in so many amazing ways. Well, thank you guys all for listening and tuning in. As always, you can find more information about us and what we do at our website, which is throughtheveiledpodcast.com. If you'd like to reach out to Camille or I, schedule a session, look at offerings and classes, feel free to go there. We have everything connected in one place. You can find ways to reach out to Camille and I. Also, we have a couple of live offerings coming up this September. We have a workshop about how to connect through the veil and spiritual gifts with our faith practice and the integration of what that looks like. We love you guys. Like, share, and subscribe as always if you feel like somebody could benefit from the messages we share on this channel. And we'll see you guys next time.